Hello and welcome to Hot and Heavy, the Elaine Bennis podcast. I'm your host, Shivani Desai. Today I'm talking about Season 2, Episode 6, The Statue. Hello everyone, I hope everyone's doing well. We have some neighbor kids who are super sweet, who love to hang out here, and unfortunately I had to kick them out because Mama's got to record, okay? I don't know why I had to say it like that, but we have these neighbors across the street who are incredibly sweet, and the kids are just such a delight. So our kids get along with them really well, and yeah, they were just kind of coming in and out, asking for snacks, a lot of snacks, which I don't mind. We've got plenty of snacks to share. But so that's been fun for my kids, but now I was the fun governor and told them they got to go. I've got to record. I can't be the snack server anymore. Other than that, since I last recorded, we as a family went to Telluride, Colorado. I almost said Telluride, Colorado. And wow, that is pretty much my favorite place in Colorado so far that I've been to. We've been here almost 4 years, so we're still exploring a lot of what Colorado has to offer. And I gotta say, Telluride, top of my list. It was extremely beautiful. The town is really cute and lots of great restaurants. It just felt good to take a trip and feel somewhat normal. We did road trips last year, but it didn't feel quite right because everything was either closed down or we couldn't really do everything we would normally do because of restrictions. So this time around, it felt really great. And yeah, Telluride, I highly recommend it if anyone wants to take a trip. So let's get into this episode. This statue, oh my goodness. Finally, we get ample Elaine and good, juicy Elaine moments. It seems like it's been such a long road to get here to authentic Elaine, but I am so glad we are here. The synopsis from my coffee table book for this episode is as follows. Jerry's apartment is cleaned by the boyfriend of a novelist whose book Elaine is editing. When Jerry and Elaine later see Jerry's missing statue at the author's apartment, Kramer poses as a cop to get it back. Elaine has to decide between working with her prestigious author or helping George, who needs to retrieve the statue to make up for breaking a similar one when he was a kid. This episode is written by Larry Charles. All right, so we open the episode in Jerry's apartment. Elaine's not in this scene, but just real quick, as we all know, the first scene is to set up the entire episode, and this one starts with Jerry and Kramer bringing up this box for the basement. It's full of grandpa stuff that Jerry can't wear, but he couldn't quite throw it out. He felt guilty about it. Kramer's super excited about it. My goodness, he wants all this grandpa stuff. He doesn't mind. And that's very Kramer. I liked that, just showing how Kramer was so excited about grandpa clothes. That really helps understand the character very well. Jerry mentions how his apartment is messy, can't wait to have it cleaned. And after George kind of offers up a woman he knows, Jerry's line of exposition there was a lot packed in there. Elaine's writer friend Rava from Finland has a boyfriend. He's a grad student at Columbia. He's going to clean it. Woo! Jam-packed with exposition. And I wanted to mention the messiness of Jerry's apartment really doesn't gel with what we know of Jerry kind of later in life and in real life. He's been a self-described neat freak. It was just interesting that his apartment was so messy without much explanation as to why. I feel like they really haven't established the neatness part of his character yet, but I felt like maybe they could have explained it. As a fan rewatching it, the whole messy apartment thing just seemed out of place. So I don't know. It's hard for me to even think that, there was a time before they established Jerry as clean as a Nazi, I think, as they said several times in a few episodes. Kramer finds the statue in the box of grandpa stuff, and George freaks out. Tells the story about when he was 10, his parents had a statue just like that. He was using it as a microphone, and he broke it. Well, his parents still bring it up. They are not over it. He wants it. Kramer wants it too, so they play Ink-a-Dink, and Jerry sort of rigs it so George will win. Because it's very bad. It's not good to be it. And this game actually sounds familiar. I had no idea what that game Choose was that they played a few episodes ago, but this game I know I've played when I was little. The purpose of the scene, of course, is to set up all the elements. Jerry's messy apartment that will be cleaned by Elaine's friend's boyfriend. George gets that statue and wants to replace it for his parents. He's very excited. Overall, it's well done. Definitely an exposition dump with Jerry's one line, but that seems like it could have been done smoother. But other than that, it had a good flow to set up the story. The next scene, we're in Jerry's apartment. Rava and Elaine are there waiting on Ray. Everyone's waiting for Ray to arrive, her boyfriend who is going to clean Jerry's apartment. We learn that Rava insisted that Elaine be her editor, and she would be off the project if she didn't get Elaine as her editor. And Elaine is so flattered and excited. So about Rava, she's played by Nurit Koppel, and there's really not too much on her IMDb profile, not much else that she did besides Seinfeld, and nothing past 1998, in fact. She was born and raised in Puerto Rico, and she used to date Richard Lewis, the comedian Richard Lewis. I think she's really good. I think this performance is awesome. And here's an example where they brought on a guest star, and while, it's just a one-episode role, there's so much to work with in terms of characteristics and the type of character she is, and she's such a big part of the story. And yeah, she nails it. I mean, including the accent, which I'd actually written down in my notes to say, what is this accent? It's not even Finnish. And then I kind of realized, I don't actually know what a Finnish accent is. So I had to look up a video on YouTube, and I was like, what does a Finnish accent sound like? I stand corrected. She did it perfectly. To me, it sounded, when I found out she was from Puerto Rico, it sounded like maybe a Puerto Rican accent. The big takeaway here, guys, is I guess I don't know my accents very well. Bottom line, Nurit Koppel nailed this Finnish accent, and I learned what Finnish people sound like when they were speaking English. And, well, I'm thankful for that. So Rava, you understand Rava right away. She takes no shit. She smokes when she wants to. She's confident with some, I don't know, you just always feel there's like a rage right underneath the surface. And basically you don't want to mess with Rava. Jerry's stressed out. He needs to leave. Where's his boyfriend? Where's Ray? Elaine's like, well, maybe he's stuck in traffic. Rava, maybe he's dead. What do you write? A lot of children's books? I like that interaction. This is another thought of mine, going back to kind of Jerry's fastidiousness that I guess hasn't been really established yet. But would Jerry let her smoke in his apartment? I mean, we know that Elaine hates smoking and cigarettes, and we really haven't heard what Jerry feels about that. But in a future episode, he does tell a guy he doesn't mind if he smokes next to him. He secondhand smokes 2 packs a day or whatever the line is. But I don't know, it just doesn't seem to jive with Jerry's character that he would tolerate smoking in his apartment. Again, who knows? I guess he does because he's letting Rava smoke there. Finally, Ray arrives. Wow, he's pretty over the top. The character is so off the wall and, annoying. I think he's supposed to be kind of annoying with his affected actor way of talking. But I have to say, it's so nice to have 2 very distinct characters as guest stars in this episode. Both Rava and Ray are clearly like bold in their attitudes and their wants, and it's fun for those actors. What a great role to get for just one episode on Seinfeld. I love it. There's nothing vanilla about Ray and Rava, and I really appreciate that. So the purpose of this scene is to introduce Ray and Rava, and we see that Rava demanded Elaine be her editor, and Ray is certainly enthusiastic. Overall, I loved meeting Rava and Ray. These are people in Elaine's world, so yay, they aren't faceless. We're not just hearing about them. Julia Louis-Dreyfus plays Elaine's excitement so well. And so far with the Elaine character, via JLD's performance, we've seen a lot of desperation on different things. So she wants to move out of her apartment so badly. And now we know that at her company, she is desperate to move up as well. Right off the bat, she's so thankful to Rava and sees this opportunity to edit her book as a way to move up in her career. There's a lot of things in Elaine's background here where we're seeing, okay, she's desperate to get out of certain situations, both in her living situation and in her career. The next scene is in Jerry's apartment, post-cleaning. It's a really short scene. Jerry is, oh my gosh, he's just raving about how well Ray cleaned the apartment. He's pointing out all of the thorough details that Ray just nailed it. He decoagulated the dish soap. He cleaned the bottom of the egg cups. He went in between the counter and fridge. He must be Rubber Man. There's no Rubber Man. Why do I think there's a Rubber Man? It's kind of funny that Elaine points that out to Jerry. There was a superhero blunder, and Elaine was the one to point it out. Elaine has to get going, though, because she has to go to Rava's house to pick up her manuscript, and Jerry is all about going. And on the way out, he points out, oh, Ray even Windexed the little people. He's so excited. So the purpose of the scene is just to show how Jerry is so pleased with the job that Ray did cleaning his apartment. And I think more to establish that he is a fan of Ray, even though he's kind of over the top and his personality is a little weird. Jerry is just a big fan now because that apartment is so clean, and it's a nice establishment of that so that we can see what happens in the next scene in the apartment and just how that takes a turn. My overall take on this scene, it's short, it's perfectly fine. It's fun to see Jerry so pleased about Ray. I wanted to point out that the choice of Elaine to kind of be staring at Jerry, a little bit annoyed, a little uninterested when he keeps going on and on about how clean the apartment is, that's a big turning point for the Elaine character, I have to say, because up until now, we've seen her be pretty cheerful or amused by Jerry for the most part, and this was kind of that first time where she's like, okay, relax. A little bit more of the acerbic Elaine that we know and love. So we move on to the next scene, Rava and Ray's apartment. Elaine is excitedly talking about the meeting with Lipman, the editor-in-chief, and this is the first time we hear about Mr. Lipman, and how because of Rava's request, demand, she corrects her, she's going to be promoted to editor. She's so excited. Again, JLD plays this so well. You just feel how much this means to Elaine. And I do like that we're getting more information. Like I mentioned before, yes, there's a desperation there, but we haven't heard a ton about Elaine's actual job. But you certainly get the idea, just like with her living situation, her job situation isn't where she wants it to be. I guess we can understand through her lack of finances that her career isn't, going as great as she wants it to be. So but I liked this, that we were getting some more background on her job at Pendant Publishing. And I also love the dan tuten. I just like Rava a lot. She's so fun to me. Okay, Ray arrives. He seems surprised and a little alarmed that they are there. And as we hear the key in the door, Rava says, "There's Ray, late as usual." Jerry cannot hold back his praise. I mean, right away he starts telling Ray what an incredible job he did. Ray goes into another overly dramatic monologue about how cleaning Jerry's apartment is something super overdramatic. Shouldn't you be out on a ledge somewhere, Jerry says. So Rava hears the kettle and leaves to make tea. And as she's walking away and going to the kitchen, Jerry gets distracted by what he sees on the mantle. It's the statue. Rava asks Ray to help, and he's about to sit down when she asks him. And I think we see a glimpse of his true self. He gets irritated and says, I'm coming. It's a different voice. It's a different persona. But I think that's his true self when people aren't around. So after they're alone, Jerry and Elaine have this back and forth. Jerry talks about, this is my statue, and it's great. I like that Elaine doubts him because Elaine wouldn't know about that statue. She's never seen it before, but she's so confused as to why he's freaking out about this. And so when he finally convinces her, I had a statue, what difference does it make? He ripped me off. This guy ripped me off. Elaine just pleads with Jerry not to bring it up or accuse. Don't start anything. Don't blow this for me, Jerry, she says. And Jerry decides, no, he needs to confirm this. So he goes and uses the phone to call Kramer, even despite all of Elaine's protests. Rava walks in and Jerry pretends that he's talking to his mother, explaining how to make French toast. What? So ridiculous. But so funny because it's like just the most random thing. So I guess Rava's supposed to think Jerry made a long distance call to Florida to his mother and then explains to her how to make French toast. It's so perfectly bizarre, and I love it. It just has that fun Seinfeld feel to it. And we also learn that Rava hates her mom. I hope she's rotting in an alley somewhere because she abandoned all the kids. Ray returns with the pastries, but Jerry wants to leave. He wants to get out of there because he knows that Ray ripped him off. And he says, I have a facial. Another just perfectly bizarre excuse to leave. So super awkward exit. The purpose of this scene is we learn about Elaine's possible promotion, and Jerry sees the stolen statue. Ray has ripped him off. Overall, it's a great scene. I like the escalation after Jerry finds the statue and Elaine first doubting him and then pleading with him to not to say anything. Rava and Ray are delightful. I like the little glimpse of Ray's true self without that over actor kind of affectation. It's subtle when he enters, and then when Rava asks him to help, you see just what's underneath the surface of Ray. And Jerry and Elaine, this was a really fun scene for them as well. They were so delightful. Also, the sort of farcical physicality between them, talking about Ray and then answering the questions about tea, and kind of, they're crouching down and then they get up and they crouch down again. And it was just really fun to see that physicality with both of them. I'm sure super fun to play too. And then the next scene, Jerry's back in his apartment. He's calling the cops, and he gets off the phone and says, well, the cops can't really help. It's my word against his. Jerry mentions, gosh, I had so many other things in this apartment, and why did he steal that? He's crazy. And Elaine says, look, if he's crazy, just forget about it. She could just feel that desperation. She's pleading with them. George says absolutely not. He already told his parents. They're expecting to hear something. His mother's making roasted potatoes. They need to get that statue back. And then we see kind of the George and Elaine dynamic starting, and they get a little bit into it. Do you realize that Rava has asked me to edit her book? Who is this Rava? I love that little back and forth because we see so much more of that to come. George and Elaine, that relationship is always super fun to watch. Jerry calls Ray, once again, completely ignoring Elaine's protests. Ray says he'll meet him at Monk's, and he doesn't want to talk about it over the phone because Rava might hear, so that's intriguing. While he's on the phone, Jerry's on the phone with Ray, George, Kramer, and Elaine are having this little kind of slapstick moment with the phone. They're trying to all listen to the extension on the other phone, and then Jerry asks them to, would you shut up? Cute, funny. I love all of them together doing this. It's so fun to watch. So then Elaine makes one last-ditch effort to stop them from confronting Ray, and both Jerry and George just say, no. The purpose of this scene is to move the story along, just set up the upcoming meeting with Jerry and Ray. We see Kramer wants to get them. I didn't mention that, but yeah, just peppered throughout the scene, we see Kramer just saying, I say we get him. I'm not happy about this. And, poor Elaine, she's desperate for them to stop. My overall take is it's frustrating. It's a little frustrating to watch this scene because I'm thinking about how George and Jerry have already kind of screwed Elaine over about the apartment twice. And now they're just turning a deaf ear to her pleas. She's pleading not to ruin a potential big career move. These men just keep getting in Elaine's way, and I find myself sort of enraged by it. I did like the physical comedy between Elaine, Kramer, and George on the phone. And like I said before, we see that our first glimpse of the George and Elaine dynamic and getting on each other's nerves and jawing at each other a little bit. Overall, it's a good scene with some solid comedy and some really good Elaine moments, but considering the arc of her character so far, it was frustrating to see Jerry and George once again totally disregard her feelings. So the next scene, there's no Elaine in it. I'll go over it really quick. It's at Monk's. They're meeting with Ray. Or Jerry's meeting with Ray. George is just listening in at the next booth. In a nutshell, Jerry confronts Ray. Ray denies it. George can't take it anymore after a certain point and explodes at Ray. And they really get nowhere with the situation. The next scene is in the office building with Rava and Elaine. Both women are waiting for the elevator. Elaine has such an excited energy, and Rava, they're just getting along really well. Rava says, your notes were very insightful, and Elaine just says, oh, the book is great. So it's a very pleasant thing. They're ready to go into this meeting. Elaine asks if she went out last night. Rava just openly admits that she and Ray made love on the floor like two animals. Everyone just kind of looks over at her. Rava is smoking and gets into the elevator smoking. Oh, I did like this exchange too. How Ray is insatiable, well, all of them are, was Jerry. I can't remember. I think this is always such a great choice. Elaine's memory of her relationship with Jerry is always presented as forgettable, and I think that's really funny. I think they do this a few times with, I don't know. I don't know if he is, or I think it's a really great way to present how their relationship was, because I don't think it would be funny or as effective if she said something like, oh yeah, Jerry couldn't get enough sex or something. It's like, this is the way better choice, and that way we just don't get really deep into anything in their relationship, because, that's not why we're watching. Oh, and I did want to mention, you see Elaine kind of start waving that smoke away a little bit, just mildly, kind of in the beginning. And I feel like it's a little bit of a precursor of what's to come as the conversation goes in the elevator. Let's get to that. Rava brings up how upset Ray is, about this whole thing with Jerry. And Elaine just says, you know what, I am staying out of it. This is between them. When we see the elevator open again, it's escalated. I didn't realize that's a really bad pun. Rava is basically accusing Elaine of thinking Ray did it. Oh, so you think he did it. Elaine doesn't back down. She says, well, you have to admit the circumstantial evidence is pretty strong. And so with each floor and each opening of the elevator doors, we see the conversation get more heated. And I really like this device. I think that's so effective to just see as the elevator is rising, so is sort of the temperature on that conversation. And in between their kind of argument between Rava and Elaine, this man just keeps asking, will you put that cigarette out? It's just everything's becoming more tense, and they do a really good job with that. And it gets to the point where Rava tells the man, maybe I put it out on your face. And then the whole thing about the coincidences, I've always loved that back and forth. Yeah, just a coincidence. No, there can be degrees of coincidences. There can be no small coincidence or big coincidence, just a coincidence. I totally disagree with Rava, by the way, agree with Elaine. Of course, there's degrees of coincidences. So finally, we get to the last stop, and Elaine is alone in the elevator and tosses the manuscript in the trash. That says it all. The purpose of the scene, we see Elaine's true feelings, and it breaks up her relationship with Rava, both friendly and professional. My overall take on this scene, this is another defining moment for the Elaine character. She is not willing to back down, even if it means she will lose out on this promotion that she needs and wants so badly. I mean, look, she wanted Jerry and George to drop it. Even though I think at this point we know that she thinks Ray stole it as well. So as soon as Rava starts defending Ray and goes as far as saying that she and Jerry are jealous of Ray and her, that's it. I mean, Elaine won't take any shit from Rava. So I love how, again, this is such a defining moment for the character. No matter what, she's not going to back down. And I love it. This is the most recognizable Elaine has been since the stakeout, honestly. So we could move on to Jerry's apartment. George is on the phone with his mom. He's trying to calm her down. Basically says, I don't have this statue. And I just like the tone. He sounds so much like a little boy. Like, I didn't even touch it this time. Oh, and the visual of Elaine pouring chocolate syrup directly into a tub of vanilla ice cream is just so great. She is bummed, and well, she's just going to eat this ice cream with a ton of chocolate syrup straight out of the tub. I love it. Kramer is even more pissed. He really wants to get him. While Elaine is making her little ice cream sundae, she suggests throwing a Molotov cocktail in their window. She's distraught. I mean, instead of editing a book of a major young writing talent, she's proofreading an allergy cookbook. I mean, George says, well, can't you just talk to your boss? But I love this line as well. Oh, he loves Rava. Worse, he loves Ray. He doesn't think you're funny at all when she looks up at Jerry. Such a great moment. The purpose of this scene, we see how Rava and Ray have ruined a lot of things for the main four. Jerry was robbed. George disappointed his parents again. Elaine didn't get her promotion. And Kramer, well, he's just pissed. He's pissed for his friends. My overall take, it's probably my favorite scene of the episode. I'm so glad that Elaine gets that laugh line with, he doesn't think you're funny at all. And that visual again of you've had a bad day, I'm just going to indulge in this ice cream. I love that. And then the comfort she feels doing that with Jerry's food, that just adds another layer of this, I guess, relationship of these close friends. It's all wonderful. All right, so then we move on to the scene, no Elaine, but where Kramer, he's Joe Friday from Dragnet with all the grandpa clothes on. And he ambushes Ray. And before Kramer even comes to the door, we see Ray sort of caressing the statue with a smirk on his face. And it, definitely tells the audience that he did steal it. So Kramer ambushes him and steals the statue back. Such a great scene for Michael Richards to really flex what he's capable of. And I'll go into that a little bit more when I get to the extras for this episode. But yeah, this scene was really, really great. Really great performance by Michael Richards. All right, and then the last scene of the episode, we're back in Jerry's apartment. Kramer presents the statue back to George, and George is so excited. He even hugs Kramer. Oh, but what happens? Of course, at the end, he drops it when Kramer gives him a big whack on the back. So the purpose of this scene, resolution to all the stories, and my overall take, it's really the only choice. There's no way George was going to get that statue back to his parents. So, and I like that all four of them were there to witness it. All right, so we're going to take a quick break, and I will see you on the other side.
Hello! Do you have a special occasion coming up, but no idea what to cook or no idea how to cook? So stressful. That's why you need Aunt Estelle's celebration food. I'm Shelley Costanza, and my Aunt Estelle knows how to cater all your special occasions. Trust me. Her good news roasted potatoes are to die for. Never tried her George Likes the Bananas Jell-O? You're missing out. It pairs so well with my Georgie is moving back home bologna sandwiches. And you don't want to miss her Florida friends visiting paella. Oh, the holidays are so stressful, so leave your Festivus meal to Aunt Estelle. Now, my Uncle Frank may disagree, but Aunt Estelle's cooking is not the disgrace of any house and won't be for yours either. Visit any Lord's Deli and go to their prepared foods case, and chances are you'll find some delicious meals from my Aunt Estelle. Aunt Estelle's celebration food, because she's the only one who cooks around here.
And we're back. All right, so the extras, there was an inside look for this episode. Michael Richards was interviewed, and he felt that Kramer became more Kramer with this undercover cop bit, and he absolutely loved doing it, and he really insisted, let's keep moving in this direction with Kramer, because I have the capability to do that. And it sort of felt along the same lines of Julia Louis-Dreyfus's feelings, behind the scenes, saying, hey guys, give me funnier stuff. I have the capability to do it. Julia Louis-Dreyfus, in her interview about this episode, mentioned the running joke that remained on set for years. She said, just repeating the line of Rava saying, there's Ray, late as usual. She noted how certain lines became huge in popular culture from the show, but that one line was sort of the cast's own inside joke, and they loved it and laughed every time. Julia Louis-Dreyfus said she could just make Jerry laugh in a second just doing that impression of Rava. So I thought that was kind of cute. Jason Alexander mentioned something really interesting. Jerry sort of had a little interaction with Narit Koppel, who played Rava. So as I mentioned earlier, she dated Richard Lewis, but they were no longer dating when she played this role on Seinfeld. And I guess the relationship between her and Jerry may not have been so friendly, considering Jerry remained friends with Richard Lewis. And I don't know, it just seemed like maybe there was a little bit of tension. Jason Alexander said, I remember Jerry just kind of asking Narit like a really just mild question, like, how are you doing? Something on that level. And she didn't respond so well. I guess Jerry's response was something that Jason Alexander said. I noted this down because I thought it was such a brilliant response and just loved what he said. And Jerry said to Nurit, he goes, "You know, Nurit, talking to you is like driving a truckload of nitroglycerin down a really bumpy road." I thought that was great. All right, then moving on to the notes about nothing. Jane Leaves, who goes on to play the Virgin in a future episode, she auditioned for the role of Rava. Kind of interesting. Also for the role of Ray, Hank Azaria and Tony Shalhoub both auditioned for that part. They had a note about JLD and her feelings on the writing on Seinfeld. She said, "I saw 2 scripts when they offered me the part, and in one of them, Elaine had very little to do. I just wanted Elaine to be real. The writing was so natural and realistic, and that's what appealed to me about the show. I think Elaine is sort of like myself, except that she's got more edge, and she's a lot more neurotic than me." In another note, they mentioned that Elaine was originally supposed to be in that scene at Monk's where Jerry meets with Ray, and she was to be wearing this large floppy hat as a disguise, which in the script she doesn't like it. She complains about the hat, and she says, "I'm not a hat person. I look like one of the Cowsills." And I was like, what the hell is that? And apparently the Cowsills were a singing group from the late 60s, early 70s. I have to say, I think the scene worked as it aired with just George there. And look, I would always love more Elaine, but I don't think she would have risked Ray recognizing her in the coffee shop. So I think just George being there, that felt perfectly fine to me. Then they had kind of a random quote from Julia Louis-Dreyfus in the notes about nothing about her time on SNL. I always love to hear about stuff, especially people who've been on that show. So Julia Louis-Dreyfus said, "I learned an enormous amount from that show, but I don't miss it. 3 years is a long time. It was a grueling experience, a very hard job to have. It was a big cast, and there was a huge competition every week to get material on the air." And I have to say, this is a consistent thing I hear from so many SNL alum. I love hearing interviews with anyone who's been on that show, either as a writer, as a performer, or writer-performer. It's so fascinating. That whole environment just seems really fascinating to me. And I'm a huge fan of Conan O'Brien Needs a Friend. Conan O'Brien was once a writer at SNL, and so many of his guests on his podcast have been on SNL at certain points in their career. And so it's always, I love when he digs into, like, what was your experience like on that show? Because it just... It ranges really from, it was intense, but I kind of love that, to, oh my God, I went through anxiety attacks like every week. I mean, it really definitely depends on the type of person you are and if you can just thrive in that kind of environment. But the environment seems to always be described as chaotic and super, super competitive, not super warm or friendly, especially if you're new on the show. It was my dream as a little girl to be on Saturday Night Live, but I don't know if I would have had the thick skin to be on it. In fact, I totally know I would not have. But so yeah, that's always something I love to hear about. And that was a nice quote from her on the notes about nothing. And then the last note about nothing I wanted to mention was interesting. JLD reveals the pet names for the 4 main actors. So Jerry apparently was Precious, Michael was Chuckles, Jason was Baby Cakes, and JLD herself was Little Yum Yum. I don't even know what to say about that, except that's very bizarre. Okay, let's move on to Contributor Corner. This week we have comments from Greg. You must recognize Greg's name from previous episodes. He always sends in really good stuff. So this is what Greg had to say about the statue. So Greg talks about how he really loves the box of grandpa clothes that Kramer discovered and how they resort to a schoolyard game pretty much to resolve who gets the statue. Greg says, grown men playing Ingadink is funny in itself. And that also Jerry has to play the parent. Now, Kramer, you got the socks. So yeah, I love that too, Greg. I thought it was a really fun opening scene. I mean, there's no Elaine, but like Greg mentions in his comments, he says, I do love how when women aren't around, us men are usually just children. I can see that. Greg goes on to say, the scene where Jerry and Elaine are in Ray and Rava's apartment cracks me up every time I see this episode. I love the shot of Jerry seeing the statue and realizing what has happened. The panicked conversation between Elaine and Jerry as Ray comes and goes from the room. The back and forth between them is gold. This guy ripped me off. Jerry, don't blow this for me. Elaine knows nothing about the statue, so all of this would have been out of the blue for her. This whole scenario is very classic sitcom fare, when they have to pretend everything is fine when the person they're talking about enters the room multiple times over. Yeah, I do feel that it was a little bit shticky, but I forgave it because I think the types of characters are so different from a regular sitcom. So yes, it almost felt like a play to me, in fact, like very theatrical with kind of, the person entering and they kind of have to lift up their bodies and they crouch back down. So I really enjoyed it. I'll forgive a little bit of shtick or very sitcom fare, as Greg says, because I think it's a really solid scene. Greg goes on to say the follow-up scene in Jerry's apartment where they plot what to do next is also great comedy. George obviously wants the statue. Jerry wants to confront someone who stole from him. Elaine wants none of this to happen because it could affect her career. And Kramer, who has no dogs in this fight, is as adamant as the others to take Ray down. And when Jerry makes the phone call to Ray, the other three all fight over the other phone. Greg says, I love when they physically fight like children. Elaine is no better than the guys and will throw down too. She is one of the guys. Yes, I really agree. I didn't think of it that way, but that's one of the ultimate things I love about the Elaine character. She is one of the guys. She can hang with one of the guys, and she doesn't sacrifice any of her femininity for that. In fact, she just brings femininity to this all guys cast, and I love that. Greg also says, perhaps my favorite scene in this entire episode is Elaine's interaction with Rava in the elevator. I love how Elaine is frozen-faced when she asks Rava what she did the night before, and Rava says, we made love on the floor like two animals, and how she lightly coughs when Rava smokes like a chimney. Elaine would hate this woman in any other circumstance, but she needs her to further her career. Yes, Greg. Oh my gosh, yes. That's why I liked the little wave of smoke before they got on the elevator, because like I said earlier, it seemed like, okay, this is a little bit of a precursor to her actually blowing up at Rava. It's like this smoke thing, man, I really hate it, but I'm just going to put up with it. So back to Greg's comments, he says, ultimately, Elaine is not one to bite her tongue, and when the topic of the statue comes up, she has to side with her friends. I love the cuts of when the elevator opens on different floors, and the argument has intensified just as the floor number does. The discussion of the degrees of coincidence is such great writing and is a staple of Seinfeld-David comedy, basically playing with the meaning of a word we all use all the time and making that funny. By the time they get to their floor, Elaine is done with Rava regardless of what it means for herself. The victory throwing out of the manuscript is an act of triumph for her. Yes, totally, Greg. It's interesting. Like I mentioned, this is actually written by Larry Charles, but man, he really captures that Seinfeld-David quality that you're talking about, with the whole degree of coincidence. Now, it is possible that Jerry and Larry added their own spice to it, when they got the script. So maybe that section was literally written by Jerry and Larry, but I do love that part too. It's such a great back and forth and something to really think about. It's not one of those back and forths just to make people laugh. It's like, wait, could there be, And again, I side with Elaine on that one. Of course, there's degrees of coincidences. And I like the way Rava says, coincidences, just a coincidence. Can you tell I really like speaking like Rava? Moving on to Greg's final thoughts. He says, I view this as one of the transition episodes where we see Elaine as a full-fledged character. Her arc goes from excited, happy, angry, and ultimately let down. She plays with each of these emotions so well that you are right there with her in the moment. While George is the character you often watch and think, why would he say that? Elaine is the character you watch and say, that's exactly what I would say. I must say Ray is over the top, annoying, and phony, written as such, not the actor's fault. And I could never see how he and someone as frigid as Rava could even be a couple. That's a good point. Yeah, they're a very odd couple, but I think that added to just sort of how delightful I thought they were. Greg says, last but not least, this episode stresses me the F out. Whoa. Ray clearly stole the statue, but denies it so hard that you think that maybe he didn't, and it was a coincidence. Jerry's baffled by the act of stealing something so random, and I guess that's how this episode leaves me feeling. I need more closure than just Kramer taking it back. I need to know the why as to what is going on in Ray's head. While Rava seems dark and evil, Ray is the real psychopath. Yeah, I think maybe that's why they're a couple. And like I said, those little glimpses we saw of him at their apartment, both when he enters and then the I'm coming. Maybe Rava knows his dark side. So behind the scenes, that's how he is, or not in front of other people. That's how he is. So that's why they work together as a couple. They're both psychopaths in their own way. She's a little more outwardly that way. He just hides it with this veneer of overdramatic actor person. Thank you so much, Greg. Those were once again great thoughts, and we are so on the same page for a lot of it. And if you would like to become a contributor to this show, please send an email to elainepodcast@gmail.com, and you could have your thoughts read on this program, or you can send in an audio clip and I will include it as I see fit. It's got to be real good, guys. So please, if you want to become a contributor, again, email elainepodcast@gmail.com, elainepodcast@gmail.com. All right, so my favorite Elaine moments. I have so many to choose from. This is so wonderful. Okay, so the elevator moments are definitely my favorite because you really see how Elaine will just stick to her guns when unfairly challenged. And this is the Elaine we know. This felt like we're seeing the real Elaine emerging from the eggshell that the writers seemed to be stepping on when they were writing her in previous episodes. I'm really proud of that analogy, you guys. When she starts arguing with Rava, her facial expressions of disgust and that fire in her eyes, I love it. This is, I'm seeing that Elaine coming out. It's wonderful. And even though we're all pulling for Elaine to get that promotion, we also don't want Rava to get the satisfaction of winning that argument. No, fuck her. She's terrible. Yeah, that elevator, that scene, I loved everything about it, and JLD kills it. Everything about that's very satisfying. And then also, I do love the ice cream from the tub and saying that line to Jerry. You didn't think you're funny at all. And again, I just love that Jerry's comedy is a punchline on this show. Comes up over and over. So it just works really well. So much better than kind of regaling Jerry's comedy as like, he's such a wonderful comedian. I love that Jerry has a good sense of humor as the real Jerry Seinfeld to, in his show, make fun of his own comedy. It's great. All right, so finally, some final thoughts. Bravo to Larry Charles. What a great episode. What a great first episode. He goes on to write some really great ones in the series. And this first one, it's just so interesting that I feel this is a bit of a breakthrough episode for the series. And it was written by someone else, not Larry and Jerry. So it really kind of blew my mind when I saw that Larry Charles wrote this episode. I was looking forward to this episode because, as I was trudging through those episodes where Elaine had basically nothing, or the episodes were just kind of falling flat. This is kind of that first episode that they'd really reached their stride. And this is, again, a breakthrough for Elaine for sure, but even Kramer. So, Jerry and George as characters have been pretty well established up until this point because, it's not surprising. They're based on the creators of the show, so of course they could be written more easily. But Kramer and Elaine were sort of in this no man's land up until now. I would say more so with Kramer, because at least with Elaine, they had a point of reference with Monica Yates, Larry David's ex-girlfriend, so they had something to go off of, but it was still very undefined. But this episode let each of those characters really blossom, thanks to Larry Charles and his writing. And those meaty guest parts too, Rava and Ray. That was, what a great gift to give a guest star on a show. It's one episode, but a lot to work with, a lot of fun comedic things to do. Oh, and real quick, I love the actor who played Ray. He did a fantastic job. Yes, Ray was written super annoying, but the actor's name's Michael D. Conway. And I thought he was really great. In fact, I'm surprised I haven't seen him in more stuff. I mean, he's from his IMDb. I just saw that he's had a lot of bit parts on a lot of shows, but nothing that I honestly recognized. But yeah, I just thought he did a fantastic job in this episode. So, and this is the first time we see camaraderie with the main four. I mean, everyone's plot was related to this whole situation with the statue, which was great. And we got to see everyone interact with each other. And that was such a treat and kind of a window into how the cast could play so well together. And, yes, it's all four of them, but then also just the breaking off of the Elaine and George little kind of back and forths in this episode. It's just that start of that relationship, which is one of the best ones in the entire series. And ultimately, I think it's a really strong episode because all of the cast members contributed pretty equally and all had stakes in the one plot. I mean, I guess it could be argued, well, Kramer doesn't really, but I think you just see Kramer's loyalty to these friends, which I really love. And hey, that's stakes for Kramer. So I appreciate that. So again, just bravo to Larry Charles for bringing that out. I mean, the show really needed it. I think this episode defined so many things that needed to be defined with Kramer and Elaine so that they could just keep moving in that same direction, which I think really does happen from this point on. So, wow, Larry Charles. I think I can just safely say Larry Charles saved Seinfeld. I don't know, bold statement, but I'm saying it. Okay, I think that's all I can say about the statue. Thank you so much for listening, and I will see you next time.